Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. Tonight, we've got an incredible show. Starting off the top, we got an interview with Wes Mitchell of Gamecocks Central. From there, we are going to be talking all about the Stefon Diggs trade, the fallout, the implications, and how that gets into tonight and our weekly mock draft. Let's get it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. I am incredibly proud and glad that you have joined us tonight. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into, but as per usual, I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. I'm glad that you've chosen to hang out with us tonight, and thank you for tuning in, or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify or YouTube, or however you pod. If you are watching on Twitter right now, hop on over to our YouTube page, join the conversation. Also, want to make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page and that notification button as well. It'll let you know every single time one of our Cover One shows is live. Now, guys, we are in the thick of it. We are deep rooted into the offseason, a few weeks away from the absolute biggest day for most NFL fans, the NFL draft. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got some special content. Starting off the top, like I said, Wes Mitchell from Gamecocks Central. He's going to tell us all about Xavier Legette. And I know he's a guy that's rising up the Bills fans charts. From there, we are going to talk about Stefon Diggs and all the fallout there and how that threads into our weekly mock draft. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get right into tonight. We're going to get right into our interview with Wes Mitchell. So, Wes, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, Thomas. Appreciate you doing this, man. How are you?
We are doing good. Very, very excited. All week long, I know since we talked about a week ago, I've been kind of just really gathering my mind about Xavier Legette, just because he seems, you know how this time of year is. There's risers and fallers and guys that kind of at the very last second become fan favorites. And Xavier Legette just kind of seemingly has been a steady climber, a guy that, people knew of. He was very talented this past year. And now, because of some of the combine results, obviously you knew he was going to test well. He's kind of a physical freak. Now he's starting to rise because people are saying, well, he presents a couple things that really would benefit the Bills. So why don't we start right off the top? And first off, tell us what you do. Tell us what you do with Gamecocks Central, and then how that translates to Xavier Legette.
Yeah, and I could talk about Xavier all night, man. Like talking about good guys, and he's a great dude, hard worker, and we'll get into some of that. But, yeah, Gamecock Central, we've actually been around. I've been at Gamecock Central for 10 years now. The site itself has been around since 1998. So when sports media was first becoming a big thing on the web, we were a part of the Rivals Network. We're now a part of the On3 Network. So we're really big into recruiting coverage and then, of course, team coverage with South Carolina football as well. So that really gives us a chance from just an ability to give some insight on guys. I remember following Legette from when he was kind of a sophomore at Mullins High School, and you started to hear a little bit about him then. And then I kind of watched him grow during his high school career, and then heard a lot about him even when he first got to South Carolina, and then just kind of being able to watch him develop and kind of grow into the complete receiver that he is today. So, we think it allows us to provide insight to our readers and viewers, just kind of that entire process from first introducing them to someone when they're in high school all the way up to hopefully for a lot of the guys, the draft process.
So you kind of alluded to it. You've obviously been watching and kind of following along Xavier's story since he was at Mullins. This story is one that I think a lot of people don't know, but for Bills fans, one thing that is, kind of tried and true is Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane very much push the culture. It is all about family. It's all, i.e. what just happened. Stefon Diggs traded, took a huge cap hit, of dead money just to get somebody out that they say it was a performance to some degree. You'd have to read between the tea leaves to believe that there's probably something a little bit more in terms of character. So that being said, guys that have that character, guys that present leadership, that maybe work a little bit harder, or ones that that are, to that old adage, first in, last out. What is Xavier's story? Tell us who Xavier Legette is, and what's gotten him to this point, because obviously we know he's a converted quarterback, but there's more to that.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I would say, first and foremost, he's not going to be like your vocal leader type that's going to be rah-rah, yelling in people's face. That's just kind of not what his personality is. He's going to be lead by example, kind of like you said, first in, last out. And, we really saw as his career at South Carolina progressed, him just sort of, I think, also realized, like, he was always a hard worker, but I think he sort of took it up to another notch as he got deeper in his career at South Carolina and kind of saw exactly what it was going to take his game to the next level. As far as his background, his story, what he's all about, this is someone who lost both parents at a young age and really had to deal with tragedy at that time. And kind of, the family aspect is certainly something that I don't want to speak for him, but I believe he would probably tell you he found, on the football field and in the locker room among his teammates and coaches. And certainly because of what he's been through and the way he carries himself, somebody that you pull for and want to see the best for. And, I think looking at him throughout kind of his career arc as well, he was able to kind of build confidence as his career progressed at South Carolina, was behind some guys early on that were maybe a little bit more just further along in their receiver development. Now, don't get me wrong. He was initially, even the day he arrived on campus, like, we'll kind of hear reports, hey, this freshman looks good in the weight room. This freshman has caught our eye. Legette was one of those, like, he's kind of a first off the bus, especially in college. Like, when you guys see him in person, where your fans see him in person, if he hopefully ends up with the Bills, you don't even you can't tell on video. He's one of those guys that you, like, once you see him in person, you're like, this guy looks like a linebacker almost physically, just the way he is put together.
Like a DK Metcalf type of guy.
Yeah, yes. Just, I mean, God blessed, like naturally freak
Right.
of nature, just, an incredible athlete. And like you alluded to, he played some quarterback in high school. Now, I do think something that was helpful for him, he did play some receiver early on in his high school career and then converted to quarterback late in his high school career. So he was not starting from scratch. He did have, now came from a small school out of high school. And I think for your listeners and viewers, another thing to kind of that will help them get context here, the state of South Carolina, like, we are known for guys that kind of come from a smaller school that are a little bit under the radar, kind of maybe are raw as far as their development, but are just physically blessed. And he's like the next in just a long line of guys from this state that fit that exact sort of MO. And
Right.
Sometimes it all comes together early in their college careers, and sometimes it does take a little bit of time. We can get into that detail a little bit more later if you want, as far as what made him, I think, take that next step. But like I said off the top, man, just a guy that you want to pull for because of what he's been through, the way he works, and definitely almost is a little bit kind of shy as far as his personality. Like, we really started to see him open up a little bit in the latter parts of his career. I got to do a kind of a sit-down radio interview with him, and he really kind of opens up more in that setting than what you're going to see in like a press conference setting with all the lights and people asking him a bunch of like press conference style questions.
I'll say this, and Josh Allen, actually, we played a clip last week of Josh kind of talking, and this is actually the first time, granted, we had Stefon Diggs, so the necessity wasn't there, but he spoke on all the receivers, and Xavier was one that he specifically spoke on, about how he's got like the most Southern accent, like a very Bubba Gump type of just, down South, just very guttural voice, which is amazing. And I've gotten to watch a couple interviews. He's I don't know, he's seems like a very sweet human being. You could tell he's just cut from a very, like, I don't know, a cloth of a person that's just, I don't know, very pure. He doesn't seem very, I don't know how to put it. He just seems like a really, really good, down to earth person. But when you talk about Xavier, with his story, obviously going from wide receiver to quarterback, and then, when you spend most of your high school career into the beginning part of your college career as a quarterback, you're not spending any time with wide receivers coaches. You're not spending other time with wide receivers training. So what allowed him, obviously besides his God-given just physical gift, what allowed him to kind of translate that and become, because I mean, you saw the stats, right? And, bring him up just for the sake of conversation. His stats from 2019, 80 yards, 2020 was 113, 2021 he had 63, 2022 he had 167. And then this past year, he had 1,255 yards and 7 touchdowns. So, I mean, a very mammoth jump in terms of production. What allowed him to make that jump? What allowed him to be that guy to now kind of take himself from being just a normal 7th round UDFA to a guy that could potentially be taken at the back end of the first?
Yeah, and I think like anything, there's probably multiple reasons. But for one, I think that the confidence level just skyrocketed late his prior season. It was kind of one of those things, I think you see this a lot of times in college. A guy will have a great finish to one season, and that will springboard them into the next year. And that was really the case for him. If you go back to the end of the 2022 season for South Carolina, they had a couple of really great games offensively. They beat Tennessee. They beat Clemson. They went toe-to-toe with Notre Dame. And he and Juice Wells, one of their other wide receivers, really sort of just took off at the end of the year. And so that season and the season prior, South Carolina really had maybe 6 guys, and Legette was one of them, but they played a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, but they were rotating guys in and out. And eventually Juice Wells kind of emerged as their go-to guy in that 2022 season. And then so he was hurt most of last year, and they were really just looking for somebody to step up. Well, simultaneously, if you go back to preseason this past season, the coaches kept kind of trying to tell us, like, looking back, they kept bringing up Legette and, like, this guy's had a great offseason. This guy has just done everything we've asked and then some from that. And it was kind of one of those things where you want to see it first. Like, you're like, all right, they're talking up a guy for working hard. Let's see if it translates to the field. Right. And I mean, I'm here to tell you, like, it was instant. Like, if you want to go back and watch South Carolina against UNC, which was their opener this year, I mean, Legette's making plays down the field. He's making jump ball plays. He's taking short passes and turning them into long gains. And really, I think the prior year, they used him more kind of a situational guy. Like, they put him in the backfield a little bit. They would use him on jet sweeps and reverses. And it was more like, this guy's big and fast. Let's try to get him the football in some easy situations to get him the ball. Well, I think we saw his confidence as an actual pass catcher just explode. The middle of that prior season, he had a couple of drops. He had a couple of balls that went off his hands that turned into interceptions. And, you could tell it kind of just hit him that, I put that interception on my quarterback's resume, basically. And as the year went on, he was kind of a special teams guy, which I think that's something else. If you're an NFL team, you always want that roster value.
Versatility is huge.
Yeah, I mean, y'all can go back and watch. This is a guy that would be a gunner on punt team. He is flying down the sideline. I mean, has very bad intentions for this punt returner when he gets there as a wide receiver. He's kickoff returner. He's got a return in 2022 where he does the final 50 yards with one shoe on. And a special teams guy that can help you there, man. Punt coverage, kickoff return, really was just I'll do anything that's being asked of me type guy. And I think, it's a program where you talk about the Beamer name, being a guy who is willing to help on special teams and put in that effort, that goes a long way towards, like, building favor with this staff as well. So I think they went into this past offseason. They have a new offensive coordinator in Dow Loggins, who came in and, of course, was kind of like, hey, it's a clean slate for everybody. Show us what you can do. And really just impressed from the moment, I would say, spring ball started as far as the staff is concerned. And then from the moment the season started for the rest of us, we're like, this guy has just taken his game to a completely different level. And then really it was pretty consistent from that point forward. He was playing hurt a lot of the season too, which makes it all the more impressive. Missed a little bit of time, and I guess probably the middle to late part of the season. But for the most part, when he was out there and healthy, it was just nonstop that he was going to make an impact.
So obviously with that, I mean, Sean McDermott loves versatility. A lot of the guys you'll see on the Bills roster, he'll bring in just with this. I mean, Justin Shorter, we drafted him last year out of Florida. He was drafted because of his special teams ability. So providing that type of just versatility is huge. But when it comes to Xavier Legette, obviously, prior it was just Gabe Davis when I talked to you that the Bills needed to fill that void. Now it's Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So I mean, there's 200 plus targets of just sheer opportunity for a guy like Xavier Legette. So for Bills fans, who may not be as well versed in Xavier Legette, besides maybe just watching a highlight tape that somebody threw together, who is Xavier Legette? What does he provide, and what kind of offensive just ability does he present for Josh Allen?
Yeah, and I think first of all, and I'm not as well versed in obviously the Buffalo side and y'all's scheme
Sure.
and exactly how the route trees and concepts and all that work. But I'll say this: watching him this past season, he would be a guy that can kind of do just about everything. And what I'll go deeper into that is South Carolina moved him around quite a bit. Like he really is an outside receiver, I would say, as far as like prototypically. But they would move him in the slot just to get some different matchups. If you want to go back, there's a couple of games that just stand out. They would use him in underneath routes, but also they're using him down the field where he's just winning jump balls. And I think for this offense this past year for South Carolina, they had a lot of O-line problems. So a lot of times it was, let's find a way to get 17 the ball. And we don't care if the opponent knows. We don't care that everybody knows he's our number one big play guy. Let's just force it to him. And they did a really good job, I think, of finding ways to get him the ball. Against Mississippi State, he runs a little drag route, and this one I think kind of went a little bit viral because he was running, I guess 22, 23 miles an hour. But I was at this game, and it just looked like a normal kind of shallow cross. He catches the ball in stride and just outruns an entire SEC defense to the house. And it was just like he made up his mind, like, we need a big play. I'm about to provide it. And then you look at the kind of the other side of the skill set, the UNC game. Rattler's under duress pretty much the entire game, got sacked 9 times. And at various points, I think just said, I'm going to throw the ball up for Zay. And he's winning these battles. So, I think kind of that was the part of his game that I thought came along the most. He was always a big, fast, physical guy. He's going to run through contact at the end of runs. He'll make you miss, but that's really not his game. Like he's so big, like he's going to run through cornerbacks. He's not going to really try to go around them. But then once he finds space, that's when you're going to kind of see him hit that long speed and stuff like that. And, I would think for a big armed guy like Allen, who can kind of at times just out throw the defense and kind of just breaks what a defense is trying to do. This is someone where he's going to have that long down the field speed that at times you're probably just going to say, let's see how far Allen can throw it. And let's see how far Legette can run. And I think he can do those things for you. A lot of people, it's kind of a lazy comparison. They want to compare him to Deebo Samuel because they're both from South Carolina. They're not exactly the same guy. Legette's kind of taller, more of a jump ball guy, whereas
I've
Deebo,
heard AJ Brown.
Yeah, I like that. And I think certainly from like a stature and physicality standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. And then just, he's a guy that, like I said, is going to be willing if you want him, if you need him on special teams. He's going to be, there's not going to be any, he's not going to put his head down about that. It's going to be just, what do I need to do? I'm going to go do it. But the progress this guy made, and I would give a lot of credit. You asked me earlier kind of why, I think Justin Stepp, South Carolina's receivers coach, did a really good job developing him. And also just the fact, like I said, a lot of people have assumed because he was a high school quarterback that he had never played receiver before, whereas he did at least have kind of a baseline foundation of playing receiver prior to shifting to quarterback later in his high school career. So wasn't quite as raw as a guy who just plain was playing quarterback and had to make the full transition to receiver.
Do you think, based on what he's, obviously with 1 year sample size, and a lot of that obviously, injuries and what he's went through and kind of just the journey he's gotten there, do you think for the Buffalo Bills taking in at 28 and obviously being a first round pick and what they need, is he a guy that in your belief can transition into that number one X receiver, a guy that is just, a franchise defining player.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the biggest thing there will be just to obviously, I think if I'm an NFL team and I'm spending all this money and energy, and, obviously, if you draft a guy there, you're expecting an immediate impact. The one pause is going to be like, all right, Zay, why did it take so long for you at South Carolina to make that impact? We don't have 3 or 4 years to wait. And I think that's fair. But also, I think this is a guy who's just going to come in and kind of refuse to be denied for you. And, he's already I can't really express how much of a just physical athlete this guy is. And I think when you add in the big thing for him, I think will just be for whatever staff gets him to instill that confidence in him to keep, if he has some early drops, just keep getting him the football, keep feeding him the ball, and let that confidence build from there. Because I don't know if there's much of a ceiling on this guy, honestly, once he puts it all together in the NFL, and he's going to give you everything he's got. And I really like the versatility that he's going to bring you as well. Now, the draft boards I read, a lot of them maybe get you a little bit more into early second as opposed to late first. So as far as value goes, it will depend, I guess, where the Bills have him. But I've from covering it from the college side for many years now, I've learned, I've had family members of players be like, hey, we're going to one of these 5 teams. And if it's not these 5, it's going to be the next 5. And it's not these 5, it's going to be these 5. And then it's not any of those 15 teams. So it's like a complete crapshoot, I feel like, as far as really trying to predict what an NFL team is going to do, because there's so many variables, right? But, I feel like the Bills would do very well for themselves to draft this kid. The only question I have, and maybe I'll just throw it at you, do you guys see receivers struggle to adjust to the cold, or does that matter at all? Because we don't have snow down here. I can just tell you that. If it snows, everybody's out of class. They're out of school for 3 days.
Yeah, you guys get a dusting. The whole city closes down.
Yes, everybody buys up all the milk and bread at Walmart for some reason. So that would be my only question. Does the chill affect receivers that are Southeast guys going to Buffalo? I don't know. That's the best I can come up with as far as devil's advocate, I guess.
So for Buffalo, and I'm actually in Rochester, which is about an hour outside of Buffalo, but Western New York falls are beautiful. I mean, downright beautiful. And, this weird misconception or misnomer about Buffalo and snow, that we're we're the Arctic tundra and, we're in the middle of nowhere and we get 10 feet of snow. It's not that. We don't get that much snow. And in fact, lately, and this, the weather with climate change and all that, and I don't want to get down that pipeline, but it's not bad. It's not that bad. And to be honest with you, the nice thing is you got a quarterback with a cannon of an arm that can deliver a ball in any type of weather. We've seen it. Josh Allen and I was at the game in Buffalo when we beat the Patriots a couple of years ago when it was literally negative 20 degrees below zero, put up 37 points. So, Xavier looks like he's built like a Greek god. I'm fairly certain he probably can withstand the cold. So you don't see it too often. If it is, you're probably not meant to play football in the first place. So, but needless to say, Wes, I absolutely, downright appreciate you taking the time. I know you had quite the truck in to get from work, but tell people where they can find your content, because I know they're going to want to watch more about Xavier Legette and kind of get a little bit more insight.
Yeah, check us out, GamecockCentral.com. I'm of course on X, Twitter at Wes Mitchell GC, also at Gamecock Central. We'll have we may, and I'll send it to you if we do. We may have we're kind of working on maybe getting a little sit down with Zay before the draft as well. So if that happens, I'll definitely send it to you so you can show it to your readers and listeners and viewers and all that, man. And if he gets drafted by the Bills, I'll just hit you up and maybe you can come do our podcast as well.
Yeah, likewise. I was just going to say, if Xavier gets drafted by the Bills, we'll have to have you come back on and we could talk a little bit more. But Wes, I absolutely appreciate it, guys. Make sure you hit Wes with a follow up his content, Gamecock Central. And Wes, we'll be talking soon.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You as well.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There it is, guys. That was Wes Mitchell. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I enjoyed interviewing Wes Mitchell. He was fantastic and really gives you a true insight as to Xavier Legette, kind of who he is, what his backstory is. You know, with him not having, having both of his parents pass away. Obviously, a definitely different story of a guy in his upbringing, what he's going to be. So big things ahead. But guys, let's get right into it. Let's get right into tonight's main topic, the Fils de la Resistance. Let's talk about Stefon Diggs. Man, guys, I've been wanting, since this news came out yesterday, I've been very excited to talk to you all and chop this up with everybody in the chat and kind of figure out what the sentiment is. Because, man, I was on the phone with my wife yesterday. I was doing a video call. My wife is on spring break and she's home with my son all week. So I was video calling with her and just talking about things. And then all of a sudden I look at my phone and it's, Stefon Diggs is traded. So the first thing I did was make sure that it was in fact a real Adam Schefter, because apparently that's what we do. And, first off, let me say this. I absolutely have a tweet out there. You probably saw it on, I am now taken down in infamy. My old takes exposed, the Twitter account. I absolutely did tweet something out. And it absolutely said that I did not believe they would trade Stefon Diggs. And let's take that, right? Let's start there. Because in all reality, I don't think if you really take a step back that anybody believed Stefon Diggs was going to be traded. Right? I mean, sure, in a roundabout type of way, there was the attitude stuff, and we'll get into that in a second. But the cost side, the $31 million dead cap, the not having your number one receiver after just having Gabe Davis sign with the Jaguars, all those things together, it just didn't seem real. And I was very adamant about it. I mean, I will 100% back it. I was wrong, as very many people were, but I was wrong. I didn't think they'd trade him. I did not think that they would trade their best receiver, regardless if there was a drop-off last year. And again, we'll talk about this. I did not think they'd trade him. And the part of that is maybe it's fool me. Maybe it's I was fooled to believe that they would never trade Stefon Diggs, in the same sentiment that I was fooled to completely just nonstop defend him. I mean, I was one of the biggest Stefon Diggs apologists. I mean, in all sincerity, I truly was. That's not patting myself on the back. That's probably to my detriment. But let's be fair. I sat there every time Stefon Diggs had just a cryptic tweet, and we know they're there. I mean, let's go through it all, right? First off, weekly cheers. Appreciate you. If you guys have never had Three Heads Brewing, I highly suggest it. Big things ahead, by the way. So when it comes to Stefon Diggs, right, we knew coming out of Minnesota that there was question marks. And I think a lot of Bills fans, when he came in here, they're like, it's fine. And we kind of all brushed it off and said, it's nothing. It's Vikings fans. They're being emotional. They're being as one of our guys said today, a jilted ex, right? They're they are telling us that Stefon Diggs is, this damaged goods. And so we sat there and we kind of just compartmentalized it and figured, okay, well, he's Stefon Diggs, but he's uber talented and we need a number one receiver. And this is perfect for Josh. And then the videos came out of Josh and Steph working out together and buddy and brother this, brother that. And you sat there like, okay, things are fine. It's okay. But the problem was Stefon Diggs, by just being who he is, never shut any of it down. He never quite possibly went out of his way to make it easy on the Bills. Now, I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. Stefon Diggs is one of the best receivers the Bills have ever had in that short period. 4 years, unbelievable statistics, probably the best 4-year span of any receiver ever. But as a captain and as a player who was paid handsomely, man, did he ever make it as unbelievably and unincredibly difficult on the Buffalo Bills, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, Josh Allen. Holy hell. What he did he put the Bills through everything to make it as difficult as humanly possible for them to navigate through. And, there were moments, whether it was Stefon Diggs' brother commenting, right? And him saying, well, it's his Twitter. But yet Stefon Diggs could have easily called his brother and said, cut the shit. That's enough. This is my team, my quarterback. I love this franchise. They believed in me. They traded a first-round pick to acquire me. Done. Josh is an unbelievable quarterback. Look at my stats. Look at what he's done for me. Like Brandon Beane said the other day, elevated me to an all-pro, elevated me to a Pro Bowler. All those things, but he never did. He never shut his brother down. He never shut all these guys like Stephen A. Smith. He never came out, and I don't want to be this guy that's sitting here barrel rolling Stefon Diggs. That's not my point, but I wanna put context to what I'm saying. At any given point, Stefon Diggs could have been very clear and shut all this stuff down. He could have been very clear and come out and said, I'm very happy in Buffalo. I don't want to leave. There's no drama between Josh and I. I am not unsatisfied. Everything's good, period. But he didn't. He didn't do any of that. In fact, at every possible at every cross section, every turn, everything, he always left it up for interpretation. Always. He was always the guy, no matter how many other players on the team showed exactly how to respond or act, how many times Josh Allen defended him and sat there and gave Stefon Diggs all the possibilities and did things the right way, and Josh Allen literally gave all the PR speak, none of that happened. Stefon Diggs, he left us all as a fool. And like guys like me who unapologetically, nonstop defended him every time in Twitter spaces, on Twitter or X, whatever, on Facebook, at work, in YouTube, everywhere. I defended Stefon Diggs unbelievably. I said all the time that Stefon Diggs was the type of guy that he was misunderstood. That the tweets meant nothing. That everything about Stefon, I even said a couple days ago, by the way, ironically enough, the same day as the trade, my coworker said, what's this Stefon Diggs, Josh Allen, you sure tweet stuff? I said, it's just two guys. They work together like us. Things happen. Fool me, right? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. I said that backwards. Every one of us was fooled by Stefon Diggs. And that's not to, again, discredit everything about him. But dear Lord, this guy just, at every possibility he could have just stopped, he didn't. And, like Clint, you could say his tweets meant nothing. They weren't nothing. They weren't nothing. They were something. Because you know what? It was every opportunity for Stefon Diggs to rein that in, to be the guy that they're paying him to be, the number one receiver, the captain, the face of the franchise, everything. They gave him every chance. In fact, the GM, the coach, the offensive coordinator, both of them, Josh Allen, everybody defended him at every crosshair. I mean, everything. They always went to bat for this dude, but he never did it in return. He never went back and said, you know what? I'm going to have their back. I'm going to make them look smart. I'm going to do what's right and have my team's back and my franchise's back, the ones that are investing, the one that gave me the 4-year, $79 million deal. I'm going to defend their honor. They didn't. It was, I'm going to continue my antics and be, I hate to say it, a child, and continue these nonsense. That's what bothered me, is that you had Stefon Diggs, who had every opportunity to shut the shit down, and he didn't. He didn't. He kept it going. So now, what did Brandon Beane said? And here's the thing. People are like, oh, it's probably his, his abilities declining. And I agree. Whether, Matt Harmon from Reception Perception, we saw a couple weeks ago on the show, he was on with WGR this afternoon and he explained it. Joe Marino had a really great guest on later, or I think today. He talked about it. A bunch of very, very talented guys kind of extrapolated on what the exact thing was, right? And a lot of it was downfield, whether it's a 9 route or just his ability to stretch the field wasn't there. All those things together were issues, right? Those were declining attributes to his game. But here's the thing. In a team that has, and I love Khalil Shakir, I love him like everybody. You've seen my tweets, you know it. He had 45 targets last year. Dalton Kincaid is a second-year player. By the way, Shakir's going into his third year. Dalton Kincaid's going into his second year. Unbelievable, right? And then you've got Curtis Samuel, who I love. You know that. Love Curtis Samuel. Matt Harmon has literally been the Curtis Samuel fan of all fans and literally has just propped him up. Then you've got Dawson Knox and James Cook. Awesome. I love all that. But together as a core, there is not one particular piece of that is, I am absolutely certain, can carry this team. Because Shakir and Kincaid did it last year. But if I'm talking a 21 game season, right? If you're deep in the playoffs, I want to know for certain I've got somebody that I can lean heavy into. And I just don't have that. And that's not of disrespect to them. It's just, you need somebody, a stalwart guy, a bona fide one. And to this point, we don't know we have that yet. We might, but we don't. So with Brandon Beane, which now this trade, especially with the voided back 3 years of Stefon Diggs' contract, and now the fact that he is a free agent after the season, which is bananas. But that was not, unless Brandon Beane knew that, which is even more part of why Brandon Beane is an unbelievable general manager. But he traded him for a 2025 for a second round pick. $31 million in dead cap, added $4 million to the cap right now, and lost his number one receiver. So the reason I talk about this is you have to have one, I've said this, Brandon Beane has to have a plan, period. He had to have had a plan. There's no way you go into this without having a plan. You don't jettison your number one receiver and say, we'll figure it out. You don't. That's not what you do with your 27-year-old, $258 million stud quarterback. You don't do it. So, obviously, in this scenario, with Josh Allen being where he is, you had to have known there was more to the Stefon Diggs saga, that what he was carrying, his baggage, his drama that was infused in every aspect of the Bills, the being sent home at the beginning of training camp last year, or OTAs last year, that was a big deal. The nonsense with the tweets, the back and forth, just nonsense of how he was acting. There was obviously something more to this story, and Brandon Beane felt no matter all of what was going on, all the things that he was losing were not enough to say, I want to keep Stefon Diggs. Of all the stuff that he was going to endure, of a $31 million cap hit, of adding $4 million to the current cap, of losing his number one receiver, none of that was important. What was important was getting a guy like Stefon Diggs out of Buffalo, and with his declining abilities. So, all of those things being equal, there was obviously a concerted effort to do what you needed to do here. They had to get rid of him. And maybe I was just, like I said, fooled. I was fooled beyond measure. I truly and unequivocally believed, without a shadow of a doubt, there was no way they'd trade him. Why would they? They're in the middle of a Super Bowl window, whether fans want to believe it or not. You have Josh Allen. They are in a Super Bowl window. They are in the midst of continuing to challenge Pat Mahomes, the Chiefs, and the rest of the AFC. Why would they trade their best weapon? Why? They obviously feel that right now the best move for them is to not only get younger, but on top of that, they felt that there was, for the betterment of the Bills, they needed to move on. And so whether or not, to your point, and I'm going to put this on here, Diggs wanted out is quite frankly irrelevant, because I think it was a mutual understanding. I think what it was the Bills said, go find somebody. Go find a trade partner. Go find somebody. And that's fine. And if they like the value, if they like what they'd get in return, the Bills would pull the trigger. And of course they did. And I know people didn't necessarily like the fact that there was this, it was a 2025 pick, which I personally think it's smart. Uber Hansen said it himself. That 2025 second round pick now makes it so that the Bills can go ahead and use their first round pick in 2025. And what does that mean? What does that mean? We'll talk about that in a second once I get a little bit further into this. But I do want to go a little bit further into the Stefon Diggs conversation. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We'll move on in just a second. But my biggest frustration with this Stefon Diggs nonsense is the fact that the Bills had the opportunity. Stefon Diggs had the opportunity to thrive. They could have gotten an ex-receiver. They could have gone ahead and said, you know what, we're going to find your replacement. One, you can train him. You could show him how to be the elite receiver that you are. You have some of the best release packages in the NFL. You could show him how to train like you do in the offseason. Khalil Shakir has said himself, there's nobody better than Stefon Diggs. So all of that being equal, he could have been here. And they could have easily moved him into the slot. Or they could have kept him as the X and not had to worry about him being a downfield threat. They would have gotten a downfield threat. They could have gotten, like we talked about with Wes Mitchell, they could have gotten Xavier Legette. There's your 9 route. There's your deep threat. There's your who can stress the secondary. The guy that can cause the defensive coordinator have to worry about him having to not bring his safeties in, that they have to worry about getting the top taken off. That he can play above the rim and he can be that contested catch guy, but also a guy that can beat you with speed and elusiveness and ability. But that's the thing that bothers me. Stefon Diggs was so hell-bent on raising any type of red flag he could and getting out of Buffalo because he thinks it's going to be better. I just don't see it. He had 160 catches, 160 targets on average for the past 4 years. Now he's going to a team. Again, I like the Texans. Granted, they haven't played a first place schedule, so we'll see. But they got a great team. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stefon Diggs with Joe Mixon as their running back. Dalton Schultz is their tight end. Unbelievable. I think the Bills now have an opportunity to really, like my header says, or my header, excuse me, my splash page says, start a new era. And let's talk about that, guys, before we get into the mock draft tonight, because we will. let's talk about where the Bills are. Because obviously there is fear factor. There is the just the breadth of unknown, right? Gabe Davis, Stefon Diggs, 200 plus targets out the door like that. Just gone. What is the next step to the Bills? Just their story. You've got Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, a first-round tight end out of Utah, a guy that this past year didn't really get as much target share, didn't really get utilization as early, but he proved very, very quickly as one of the most sure-handed players in the NFL. But on top of it, a guy that Josh Allen absolutely trusts. He could stretch the field on the outside. You can utilize him on the inside. He has the ability to find the soft spot in the zone, very similar to what Cole Beasley did for a long time, and very similar to what Khalil Shakir can do as well. The Bills have a multitude of weapons between Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and Dalton Kincaid that have an unbelievable amount of versatility. They have a bunch of guys that provide mismatches all across the board. Curtis Samuel, speed. I don't know why people don't believe Khalil Shakir is fast, but he is. He's a 4.39 wide receiver, very, very quick. You have guys that have some of the best hands. Curtis Samuel also has very good hands. But you have guys that have the ability to move all over the offense. And I think this is huge for them. Huge. Which, side note, before I get too far, I do want to answer a couple of the super chats. Anthony asked two different super chats. What do you think about the breakout age chart? Is Legette at an 8%? It has Legette at an 8% chance of breakout. I think the problem with that chart is it doesn't bring into the fact that what Legette went through, right? Legette was a converted quarterback. He went through multitude of injuries. He wasn't utilized in the first couple of years. So I think it's tough to use that as kind of a framework or a baseline for him. A lot of that's more nuanced to the fact that he's a guy that learned and then flourished quickly because he was given that chance. Kind of like Khalil Shakir. I very much see Xavier Legette in the same kind of ilk as Khalil Shakir, because they're both guys that, they bleed talent and athleticism, but they didn't get the opportunity. So I think that's what's going. And I don't mean Khalil Shakir had opportunities at college, but now in the pros, I think they're getting more of that. I think that's where it's going to be kind of a situation where he's going to have to gel, but it just depends on what they do. I think that the better situation is if you had Stefon Diggs, Xavier Legette has an opportunity to slow roll into the position. Now, if he comes in and they decide he's their number one, they take him at 28. Full steam ahead, buddy. It is, you are the dude. So moving forward, he constantly confused the relationships. I'm assuming that has to do with Stefon Diggs. I think that situation is tough, right? I think the situation is tough in regards to with Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen. The whole thing is just really amok. Stefon Diggs never made it as clear as crystal for anybody involved. It was very much you had to read between the lines, which was never easy. The human element to anything is going to make everybody squirm because you don't know what you're working with. And especially a guy like Stefon Diggs, who has proven to be very eccentric, it's hard to move forward with that. So I hope that answers your question, Anthony. If there's something I can answer better, please comment underneath and I'll try to clarify a little bit better, but I definitely appreciate the super chats, guys. Continue. If you have any questions, you want to jump right up, I can answer them immediately with super chats. I do very much appreciate that. Moving forward, guys, let's get into the Feast de la Resistance tonight. I said that about Stefon Diggs, but it kind of works together. We're going to talk about the mock draft, but before I do that, let's talk about our sponsor here at Cover One. That is Underdog Fantasy. Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football. That is Underdog Fantasy. I want to tell you about the easiest way to get some action in the NFL. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite players' stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out the pick'em entry. Get every pick right and take home some cold, hard cash. Use code COVER1 and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog Fantasy. So there we are, right? Wow, I totally just tongue twisted that end part. I apologize. So that's Cover One sponsor, Underdog. I do appreciate it. Guys, they are moving into baseball season. Yankees are 6-1. So you can get into MLB, baseball, everything. There's a lot of opportunities. But let's get into the draft. We're going to talk about this, and we are going to go long tonight. I don't care. I'm having a lot of fun with you guys, and this has been a good time tonight. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the mock draft, what this means. Obviously, with Stefon Diggs jettisoning out, with the trade, Gabe Davis obviously not being here anymore, I think we're in a situation where, what's the end result? What's the answer to this equation? Because I think there's a couple things. And like I said, if you ever follow me on Twitter, I'm at the Thomas DeLoss. I absolutely appreciate you following me there. You'll see a lot of my stuff I talk, and I kind of reference back to it in my show, to my tweets. But I talked about a couple scenarios as to what they could do. Could they trade for Brandon Ayuk? Could they trade T. Higgins or the shark or the whale of all whales, Justin Jefferson, right? I think I'd be very surprised. I never, after my tweet that got blown up by Old Takes Exposed, I am going to live by the mantra, never say never from now on. I said it before, but now I really have to live by it. I have this belief that was with Brandon Beane, you can't sit there and say, oh, well, he won't do it. He's made very conscious and concerted efforts to do things that nobody believed. Jordan Poyer's gone. Mitch Morse is gone. Tre'Davious White's gone. Stefon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. You never would have thought all those things were going to happen, but here we are. Right, here we are. So I think there is an opportunity to go ahead and get one of those guys, but I think the real possibility is, can you move up in the draft, right? And obviously you see right here, the first probably, I would say 4 picks, I don't suspect much happening. I'm going to assume the Cardinals, they're probably going to, unless they take Marvin Harrison, I would assume they're probably going to trade out, and a quarterback needy team is going to come up and get somebody. Whether it's J.J. McCarthy, whether it's, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, whoever they believe is the guy up at the top, they're going to go get somebody, right? So where the draft really begins is the 5th pick. And that's where I really question what the Bills' motive in this moment is, because do the Bills and Brandon Beane, a guy that went out of his way when they traded for Stefon Diggs, they tried to trade for Antonio Brown, and what a saga that was. Then they went ahead and they tried to get Stefon Diggs, and they landed him, right? So I believe in my heart of hearts, Brandon Beane knows they don't have a number 1. I'd be stunned if they are okay with status quo. Stunned. So in that sentiment, could they trade up? I think there's a realm of possibility here. And the reason I say that is, one, I understand the value, the cost of a top 10 wide receiver is very expensive, but the cost of, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Jefferson, whomever you're going to get as a vested veteran, a guy that you're trading for, is going to be 10 times more expensive. So you're going to have a wide receiver. And let's talk T. Higgins. If they had taken T. Higgins with the 31st pick and not the 33rd pick, they wouldn't be sitting here having to worry about him, because they'd have him on the 5th-year option and they could franchise tag him, and they'd have him for 6 years, and then they could worry about Jamar Chase later. They don't have that. So now for the Bills, getting that 5th year is imperative. You can really handcuff him to Josh Allen for probably, if we're being fair, most of the rest of Josh Allen's career, if they do it right. So when you're looking at the top of this draft, right, you've got a couple big names: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. Any other year, I would sit there and say trading up the assets it would take to trade to get to that pick would be careless. It would be crazy. It would be a decision I wouldn't necessarily get behind because you're trading away the future. It's just not good business. It's not smart business. But for the Buffalo Bills, who don't have their top two receivers presently, that could change, right? We don't know who Curtis Samuel is on the Bills. We don't know who Khalil Shakir is with a bigger role. We know Dalton Kincaid's good, but we'll see what happens when that role gets expanded even further. And, that second year is always a doozy when it comes to players. The Bills need a bona fide stud. So, do I believe they could go up and trade for somebody? And let me ask you guys this. In the chat, if you guys want to put, I want to hear what you guys think. Before we get into this draft and I start this, do you want to trade up to the top 10 and get one of the big guys? Do you want to trade up between 15 and 20 and maybe get a Brian Thomas Jr.? Or do you want to stand pat and see who lands with us and just say maybe use next year's second to try to move up into the third or into the second, something to that effect? Let me know what you guys think. I want to hear in the comments what your belief is, what your action plan is, what you think is the best decision for Brandon Beane. So in terms of getting to 7, and I'm gonna pull up my phone right now because I have a tweet that'll kind of expand and give you a good idea as to what I looked at price-wise. It was the Rich Hill chart, so it gives you a good idea. So in terms of moving up, so the Bears, right? The Bears have the number 9th pick. The number 9th pick, I think the Bears only have 4 picks, so obviously they need a lot of work. They need a lot of picks. They need to revamp. They've got some good stuff there, but they still need to revamp. That would cost the Bills the 28th overall. The 128th was their 4th rounder, 163rd, which is their 6th rounder, or 5th rounder, and a 2025 first. That would get them to 9. To get to the 7th, which is the Titans, and I think the Titans could be potential because they did get Calvin Ridley. They already have DeAndre Hopkins. They have just a litany of different weapons. That would take the 28th overall, the 128th overall, a 2025 first, and a 2025 third. To get to the 5th pick, which is the Chargers. And if you're getting to 5, you're probably looking to the likelihood of getting any one of the 3 receivers. Maybe Marvin Harrison goes at 4, so you're maybe getting a Dunze or Neighbors or whatever combination, whoever goes first. The Chargers is 28th overall, 128th overall, 163rd overall, 2025 first, 2025 second, which is the one from the Vikings, unless they take the Bills one. So you have all of those, and I'm seeing all different stuff. Trade up to 12 with Denver, stick at 28, number 7, trade up to 17, number 7, stay at 28, trade up to 17, all different stuff. So we have a bunch of different options. So what we're going to do is we're going to go slow on this. I'm going to bring down the speed. We're going to take its time. We're going to go long tonight, guys, so don't worry. You guys are here with me. We're going to have some fun. By the way, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. I do appreciate it. It means the world to all of us at Cover One. Rate, review, share, all that means the world. So we're going to start this draft. We will stop at 5. We're going to see what happens. And we're going to see what happens at 5 and see what they possibly maybe will take. We're not going to do it immediately, but if there is an opportunity to get one of the big guys, we'll see. So let's go ahead and start the draft. So we got Caleb Williams going first. Marvin Harrison Jr. going second. That would surely be... Okay, there's no way. Okay, hold on. We got to redo this because none of that... Sometimes this stuff, apparently this is all goofy. There's zero chance Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze, and Brock Bowers are 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to adjust this. I apologize. That was not that was not what I anticipated happening out of the gate. That was wow. That would surely be not. I have no idea what to say in that regard. Good old artificial intelligence. That is certainly it right there. So let's bring these down right there. I had it at the middle point. Let's do this. I'm not going to do randomness. Okay, here we go. Try number 2. And this should be a little bit better here. Let it ride. Yeah, okay. So here we go. That looks a little bit better. Perfect. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so with the first 4 picks, we have got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Malik Neighbors. That looks a little bit more realistic. That looks a little bit more, no redos. Listen, Kevin Masseri. If you guys don't catch Kevin Masseri, he's on the Built-In Buffalo Network. Him and Kevin Syracuse do a fantastic job. 2 of my buddies. Kevin has been one of my biggest supporters since day one. Back when I did the show on my own, no network. So make sure you support him. Kevin's great. So we are at number 5. And I'll be honest with you, if Malik Neighbors goes number 1 of the receivers, if I'm Brandon Bean and I can trade up to number 5 to get Marvin Harrison Jr., I am going to do everything I can do. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to try. My value chart to get to the 5 would be 28. Okay. 128. 163. The first round pick and the second rounder of next year. So this, based on that, they say by PFF, they would accept this trade. I'm going to take out 163, and it still says they'd take it. Huh. Interesting. This says that's a long drop for them, but I'm very intrigued. Okay. This says, I'm going to make it more realistic. I don't want to be too out of pocket. So 28, 133, first round, second round. That gets you Marvin Harrison Jr. And here's the thing. I know you guys, we'll see if maybe we can get a pick in return. I don't think they'd give us that. Maybe they'll give us a late rounder. 181. So you still have 60 and 128. You got 181. You lose that. That gives, for Marvin Harrison Jr., a generational talent. They do, but they've also, I think there's a possibility that getting all that extra value is worth it to them. So in that moment, I'm going to say if they, in fact, would take that, absolutely. And I think to say a GM wouldn't take that, a GM is getting 2 first, a second, which is probably going to be at the top half. Well, actually, we'll do this instead to make it a little bit fair. The top half of the second round, and then pick 133. Take a pick next year instead of 181. That is true. That's probably more valuable. Take 160, or we'll take their 6th rounder for next year. I think that's fair. But here's the thing, guys. You got to understand, when it comes down to it, you have to look at what the Bills are going to do, right? Killing your next 2 drafts for a single dude. You're not talking about a single dude, right? You're not talking about just a random guy. You're talking about the best receiver in this draft. You're talking about a guy with the lineage of a Hall of Famer, right? I think that's the type of situation that is going to benefit the Bills long term. And you can't tell me getting Josh Allen, Marvin Harrison Jr. would not. I don't care what happens next year in the first round or the second round. We still have first off, we have another second round pick. So that's for another thing. But I don't care. You put Josh Allen and Marvin Harrison Jr., you are set for the next 5 to 10 years. You have your Jim Kelly, Andre Reed connection. And here's the thing, Jared, respectfully, We got to stop using the Sammy Watkins trade as a benchmark or a reason why not to trade in the future. Sammy Watkins had a drug and alcohol problem that was, first off, I'm not just saying that out of pocket, that was written by The Athletic. He had a problem, and they had a terrible front office and no quarterback here in Buffalo. So in that sentiment, the Bills getting the best receiver in the draft is crazy. Crazy to me. If we can keep the second and give them our second, I'm gangbusters on that idea. Truly. Because I think in this moment, you have the opportunity to get the best. Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the best talent in this entire draft, above any quarterback. Marvin Harrison Jr. might be better than Caleb Williams. And here's the thing. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not a diva. He is not going to cause problems. He is a guy that's going to come in and work his tail off to be everything because he's done it his entire career. So I'm going to go ahead and offer this trade for the 5th overall pick. And here's the thing, guys. We have a couple weeks, but based on this, on the Stefon Diggs situation, I have to think the Bills are going to do everything they can to get the guy they need. So let's go ahead and okay, let me say this. I'm going to leave this up to you because I love leaving these opportunities up to you guys. 1, type a 1 in the chat if you want me to accept the trade or offer the trade. 2, if you want me to continue on and maybe go to the Giants or the Bears. Or let's say Giants or the Titans, for that matter. 1, offer the trade. 2, go on another pick or 2. And then we can make that decision. Got a lot of 1s here, folks. I think you got to do it. It looks like the 1s are outweighing the chat right now. All right, boys. Let's see it. Let's offer this trade. There it is. Okay. So in that trade, the Bills now obviously traded all those picks to get, and now you have the opportunity to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. We're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. I think this is a game-changing pick right there. And here's the thing, guys. I'm gonna speed this up, by the way, because we don't need to sit there and wait for all these picks. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. The Bills have a situation, right? We knew that going into this, that the Bills were in a tight situation. They were in a pickle. The Bills knew they needed a wide receiver. They already had Gabe Davis walk out the door, Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield. And I know you guys don't like them, but let's be fair. They are still pieces and depth pieces to this offense. Right? You're going from 6 to... Trust me, Travis, if that happens, I think all of us are in that same boat. We are all going to do a Will Ferrell, My Boy is Blue run down Main Street. If I end up with Marvin Harrison Jr. on the Buffalo Bills, my neighbors are going to get to know me in a personal level. I think the Bills are in a position now where you have to sit there and say they need to do everything they can to load up on wide receiver. Can you please do a realistic look at what our draft will look like next season for curiosity? So I did one last week that was more, and it pissed a lot of people off because it was not what everybody loved, but it was very real. Next week and all the way up to the draft, except for the night of the draft, because my show is on the first night, we will continue on each week, right? We will continue up until the draft to do mocks, and we will figure out what works best. Okay? So, for now, obviously, everything is real from this point. Everything is real. We're going to make every pick in this scenario as if it was Brandon Beane. And Brandon Beane is a guy that is known to be aggressive. We traded up with the Chargers at number 5. Okay, so right now, we are at number 60. We now only have 60, 128, 144, 160, 163, 200, and then we have 2 more picks. So we're not in a bad spot. We still have quite a few picks. In this moment, I think Rook, or I messed this up, Ororo, I think is a good move. I think he's a guy that fills an immediate need for the Buffalo Bills. And at safety, we could potentially, I think, maybe take a couple of these picks and try to get up and get Cam Kitchens, or maybe try to land Dadrian Taylor Demerson at 99, try to scoop up and get him there. So I think Rook is a great pick. I think it fits a need, and I think we're going to fill that defensive line. I think we're in a good spot. So we're good there. First 2 picks, Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Buffalo Bills and Rook Ororo. I'm trying my best, folks. Side note, guys, make sure you subscribe to the Cover One YouTube. We are 500 subscribers away from 30,000 subscribers. Help us get there before the start of training camp. Let's push it. Let's get to the 30,000 mark. You guys are killing it for the Buffalo, or for us here. I totally did not pay attention to where we are. So we're gonna have to see what the Bills have here in terms of safeties in what's available. And we got Malik Mustafa here. I think that's not a bad option. And I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how the draft goes, if maybe they circle back and try to get a guy like Justin Simmons. There are some really nice free agent options here. I think Cooper Bebe is really, really, really impactful. Muhammad Kamara, a guy that I mean, most people think should go much, much higher. Defensive end, I think that would fit. Wide receivers, let's take and see what wide receivers we got here for a second one. Cornelius Johnson's an interesting option. I think Taj Washington would be a much better fit at this point, but I think Cooper would be really, really good. I think Cooper is a really nice option for the Buffalo Bills right here. Guys, by the way, while we're talking, I want to know what you guys think about this Stefon Diggs trade. What's your feelings? What's the sentiment that hit you? Because obviously this is something that was very blindsiding to a lot of us, right? Bills fans who spent a lot of time, were very in depth. I gotta believe that, man, this is something that probably hit people hard. And I want to be your respite. I want to hear what you guys have to say. We'll talk about it. Obviously, we're in the draft right now, so we're going to continue on. I think Cooper is a great pick here. So we're going to go ahead and take Cooper Beebe and move on. We do have pick 144, so we have the opportunity to circle back and see what works best for us. We got Kalen Carson here, a guy that we've talked about. We got Isaac Garando, the fastest running back at the combine. We got Makai Wingo, a very nice interior defensive lineman. I think a guy that would fit for the Buffalo Bills. I think Kalen Carson's nice. Let's see what cornerbacks potentially we have and where we could fit. So we got Kalen Carson. We got Nehemiah Pritchett. I think Kalen Carson's a nice pick. He fits a lot of what they want to do. I don't know if they'd go tight end right now. I don't think that really fits a lot. There's a definite couple options here for the Bills. I think Kalen Carson really, really fits for the Buffalo Bills. Let's see what running backs are still on the board. Kamani Vidal is one that I think if we can maybe get him closer to 200, he fits a lot of what they're looking for. So let's wait on running back right now. Let's see, defensive interior, who we're looking at. Makai Wingo, I think, is a good option for the Buffalo Bills. And obviously, we already went. Rook Okoro is a good one. So I don't think we have to push the issue at interior defensive line for the Bills. Corner would be a really nice pick here for the Bills. I think we're going to go with that. Kalen Carson. Let's get up to 160, folks. Take a look and see what works for the Bills, how we can recoup and kind of get us into a good position. Side note, guys, I do want to say in regards to where the Bills are, it's tough right now kind of looking at the situation in a vacuum because with all the changes that have been made for the Bills, it's hard to navigate both emotionally because we're fans, but also kind of in a sense of why Brandon Beane did the things he did, right? It's tough. We know they're trying to do the best they can to fulfill the roster, but also navigate the cap and clear out some of the guys that may not work best. I think you have to understand that Brandon Beane has a role to play in making sure that the Bills get what they need in the draft, clear out the space to be a long-term player, but also making sure that these guys are not going to impact the team long-term. Because somebody said this, and I thought it was perfect. The only reason you get rid of Diggs, right? The only reason you cut off your arm is because it's killing your body. And I think that's exactly what was going on. So let's continue. Right now, let's take a look. And at this moment, we're at 160. We got a couple options. And I really, at this point, I think Malik Mustafa would be a fantastic fit, fills the safety position, gives you what you need. Then we could go ahead. Maybe you could get a Drake Nugent. Let's see what wide receivers are still available for us. Could get Casey Washington. Anthony Gould is a bit of a speedster. In terms of the needs, we already got one wide receiver. We got a guard. We got a defensive interior. We got a corner. So we're in a good spot. So safety at this point, I think, is the best move. So let's go ahead and get Malik Mustafa. I think it's a guy that definitely fits a very, very big need. And then at this point, I think 200, we would come close to Kamani Vidal. We could go ahead and double down on safety and get James Williams, who's a bit of a abnormal player. He's the size of a linebacker, but also plays safety. And it works because of the fact that the Bills now have his coach. But I just don't know if they would double up on safety back to back. Drake Nugent's an interesting one. He's a bit of a smaller center in terms of a guy that fits the necessity for what the Bills need. So it's tough. You got Javon Foster, tackle out of Missouri, who I think could fit an absolute need. But then again, they went ahead today and got Lyle Collins. So I don't know if they necessarily go ahead and double down there. Let's take a look and see what defensive ends are available at this moment to give us the best needs. Braden McGregor, Jalen Harrell, Solomon Byrd, Jalen Green, Brennan Jackson. A bunch of just, guys that are going to be, kind of a work in progress. So let's see what else we got here. I think it's going to come down, to be honest with you, I think Isaiah Williams is a very nice option for the Buffalo Bills. 5'10", 180 pounds. A guy that definitely can play all over, has speed to boot. So that's definitely a chance there. Let's see. It's tough. There are some very, very interesting options for the Bills and how they can kind of fill out the roster. I think Isaiah Williams is a good option. I think Drake Nugent, having a backup center, is a really nice option. And I feel like he would fit because he's a guy that you can take for a while. So let's go ahead. Let's take Drake Nugent, and then we can go ahead at 200, potentially get that running back to fill the void. First off, I want to say, I'm hoping for the best for a lot of our friends. Bruce Nolan, I'm sure a lot of you heard Bruce Nolan is no longer with Buffalo Rumblings. Buffalo Rumblings is basically getting rid of its vidcast podcast network. I have a lot of friends over at that core group. Hoping for the best of them. Bruce Nolan is a guy that has supported this show for a long time. I love Bruce. He is like a brother to me. Hoping for the best for Bruce. And, I'm sure he will land on his feet. There's very few people as good as Bruce Nolan in this industry, in this market. So best wishes to him in general. So we will see what's going on. And here we go. MJ Devonshire, a guy that was a top 30 visit. You can pretty much go ahead and knock that out of the park. Unfortunately, we did lose Kamani Vidal. Where did he go? Oh, he went right after we picked. Wow. That was a lot higher than I anticipated. Okay. So there we are. So let's go ahead. I think we got running backs. There's a couple options. We could go Frank Gore Jr. I think that is an option. Let's see. Yeah, it's tough about Rumblings. Rumblings, unfortunately, they're owned by Vox Media. They basically just disassembled the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast podcast network. So let's go ahead. I think we are going to take MJ Devonshire here. I think it's a perfect fit for the Buffalo Bills. And we can get a running back at 204 or, go ahead and Frank Gore Jr. Fits the bill. 5'8", 195, a bit of a thumper. I think that's perfect. So let's go ahead and take Frank Gore Jr. I think he'd be perfectly fine coming here. Though I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in San Francisco. I think his father would probably love that. So I think that's an option. Cody Schrader's another really nice chance. Honestly, let's go Cody Schrader. I'm a little bit more on the Cody Schrader trade. So let's take that, and then we are going to finish out this draft, which you guys are killing it. An hour and 20 minutes, and you guys are riding strong. We will finish up the show at the end. We'll kind of recoup everything. But yes, Buffalo Rumblings cut funding entirely. Not Buffalo Rumblings, excuse me. Vox Media cut funding entirely. So sad day for a lot of our cohorts in the Bills content creating community. So let's go ahead. We can finish out this right here. And let's see what linebackers are available for the Buffalo Bills. I think it's a great way to finish this off. And Jordan McGee from Temple. We've done this before. Jordan is a fan favorite, a guy that shows a ton of promise. We're going to fill it off with Jordan McGee. I think a guy that has time to learn, kind of, like Balin Spector, can sit underneath some very talented linebackers like Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. And ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Ladies and gents, boy, oh boy. Marvin Harrison Jr. with the first overall pick, trading 128, 133, the first overall pick in 2025 and the second overall pick in 2025, landing Marvin Harrison Jr. over at the pick number 5. Second overall pick, Rook Orororo. Cooper Beebe at the 4th rounder, 128. Kalen Carson at 144. Malik Mustafa at 160. Drake Nugent at 163. MJ Devonshire 200. Cody Schrader at 204. And Jordan McGee. Folks, I don't know about you, man, but this is one of my absolute favorite mock drafts to date. I think we crushed it. I think you guys killed it in the chat. Tell me what you guys think. Go ahead, throw it in the chat right now. What do you guys think about this draft? Because I think if you have the opportunity with Stefon Diggs leaving, going ahead and getting a Marvin Harrison Jr., what an absolute coup that is for the Buffalo Bills. So, guys, like I said, and we're going to do this every single week, we are going to just kind of really, I think, figure out what's the best option with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, we know I didn't take Frank Gore. I went ahead and took Cody Schrader. The Buffalo Bills know that they have necessity at wide receiver. Taking anything beside wide receiver in the first round is no longer an option. Period. So I think what you're looking at is the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane are now pressed because the fact that the NFL knows where they are, they showed their hand. They know that they're saying, oh, you got a royal flush? Okay, game on. Every NFL general manager knows that Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, Joe Brady need a wide receiver. So I think the inherent desire is we need to start looking effectively at how we can make that happen in the next couple weeks. So, folks, I love you. I appreciate you guys hanging out for the last almost hour and a half with me here. It has been a fun night. We have talked about everything and anything in regards to Stefon Diggs. I'm going to go ahead and tweet that mock draft out in just a little bit. But I will say this. we will be here each week, 7 p.m. Eastern, every single week on Cover One Sports Network. I am excited to continue doing these mock drafts and figure out what's best for the Buffalo Bills. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter. And Ian, if you want to, let's go ahead and throw my display name up there. Go ahead right there so you can see it. Take that off. There you go. Follow me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. I have a giveaway going on right now. If you follow me on Twitter and you retweet the tweet that you'll see, I'll put it up there. You will be in the running to win 2 tickets to the Bills home opener this year. I appreciate you all. Again, as always, make sure you subscribe to the Cover One One Pass and the Cover One YouTube page. Let's keep it going, folks. We will see what is going on in the near future for the Buffalo Bills, how they replace Stefon Diggs. But I'm excited. I'm excited for what the Buffalo Bills have in the future and how they are going to make magic happen. Guys, keep following along. I'm Thomas DeLoss. I love you. I appreciate you. I will see you here next week. Let's go.